1 Winchester Planning Board. We have a full quorum this evening, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. So if you just please reply present. Let's see who we've got. I Ching Scott.
Present.
Sally Dale.
Present.
Cheryl Wolf.
Here.
And Kurt Spring.
Yes.
Present.
Excellent. And we also have with us our town planner, Brian Kelly, our recording secretary, Nancy Polcari, and we are being recorded and hopefully broadcast by WinCam, as well as being recorded via the Zoom feature. If you do not wish to appear, then you should turn off your video. So we have a full agenda this evening, as usual. Brian, if you could please scroll up, we can take a look at that. So our first order of business will be continuing our hearing on the 10 Converse Place petition, CBD 14. We will then, we've got an hour and a half from that. We will have a public hearing. We will also hear from recommendations from other boards, and hopefully there'll be time for the board to discuss. We will be hearing for a pre-application meeting for our flexible zoning on 22 Ardley Road. We have a subdivision closeout on Lock Street, and then after 9:20, we will be discussing town meeting articles. Our 9:50 item, Waterfield Lot Task Force recommendations, may be moot, as the select board has made a decision as how they wish to pursue. So we can, I think we can, they've decided to continue negotiations with Civico. And so I think that that decision having been made, we probably don't need to go over it. We can spend all that time on town meeting articles. Okay, Brian, do you happen to have handy a copy of our procedures for public hearings?
Yes, you'll just have to give me a minute.
So where we left off last week is we had opened up comments on, not last week, the last time we met, we had opened up public comments on the selection of a consultant, and then we are going to be wrapping back around to our, I believe it was number 5, where we once again start the hearings.
And I can't mute myself. Please don't come in here, Dennis. Thank you.
And Brian is struggling to get us to that point.
I'm sorry. You'll just, yeah. I am searching. I did not have that ready.
Okay.
I do. No, those. Sorry, these are the old ones.
I just, the part that is I'm unclear about these proceedings, and I apologize, I don't have them in front of me either, is whether we begin with our with the public comment, or we begin with comment from other boards and committees.
It's other boards and committees that I am. If that's all it is, I know that it is boards and committees first,
Okay.
and we delayed that one because at the time boards and committees hadn't met, but now they have met. So boards and committees are definitely first.
Okay, so we have two. We have a memo from the Design Review Committee, as well as from the Historical Commission, and the Design Review Committee. If you could pop that up, Brian. I think you've got that.
Yep.
Okay.
So DRC meeting minutes. We seen.
We are still seeing the agenda. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So 10 Converse Place. So this is explain. The minutes show that the applicants who were there, Rob Clocker, Ian Gillespie, and Paul Sutley, and they showed their slide presentation that we had seen. And listed their goals as the applicants stated them, and the DRC comments are here. So we can go through them quickly, and I'll go quick. So the DRC comments are, they were impressed by the design and the thoughtful design process. They appreciated the project team's attention to quality and look forward to seeing further development of the design, especially the site and landscape. They need to understand better how the project will conform to the Aberjona initiative. One member commented that the design is proceeding, but the building feels big and out of scale with downtown Winchester. This member would favor a reduction in the height or footprint of the building. There was a request to see sections of the steep bank descending from the site on the east and south water sides, and question the unsupported extension overhanging the entrance at the corner of Converse Place and Mount Vernon. F was to request the project team to coordinate paving materials with existing materials to maintain continuity with the rest of the town and avoid abrupt contrasts, especially at walkways, and create a unified town character. They suggest studying a two-story expression for the bay windows with the contrasting material on the building's east side to give that side a more vertical proportion. The DRC looks forward to seeing more detailed designs for grading, lighting, planting, building, paving, and landscape materials. That was all the comments that the DRC gave. If you give me a minute, I can bring up the historical commissions that met on this last night.
Excellent, thank you.
Are we seeing a Word doc now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the quick scroll, everybody. So these are actually a little more detailed. These were done after the meeting last night at 10 o'clock. The recording secretary did this because they knew that the hearing was this evening for public comment. I don't know if the entire board has had the chance to read this, but going through all of this, I don't think makes a good use of time. This is three pages, and you should have it in. It was sent to you this afternoon. I'm certainly not going to sit here and read three pages of comments, although they are extremely detailed and very much appreciated. But Dia, that's your call.
I would think that they are all in the record if we could just get to.
Yeah, I mean the main vote that they had was it was one vote, but it had two parts to it, and it was 6-0 with one person not there, Bruce Hickey, but it was a 6-0 vote, and the vote was that there are no adverse impact on any historic resource, and they recommended favorable action on the petition. So it was a single motion, two parts. And this is 3 pages showing that.
Okay, I mean, I think that this isn't a public record, and if anyone wants the details, they can certainly read it. And the key for us is the decision that was made, which was a 6-0 in favor, and more importantly, that there was no impact to historical resource, which is, of course, the Historical Commission's purview. Okay, I believe our next, those are the two that we have. Concom, of course, is doing their own. Brian, do you know if Concom has received a permit application?
I don't believe they have yet.
Okay.
Or I know they're in talks, but I don't believe they have filed.
Okay. So at this point, we have had at least we've had two emails to us, I believe, 2 public comments that I've seen.
Yeah, there are several, and I believe they are actually they are here as well. The 2 that came in this evening are here now. They basically wanted to make sure, but it's up to them whether they want. We won't do both, but if they would like to read their statement, or they can, they've given us their statement, but
yeah, in the interest of time, why don't we, since we have their written comments, why don't we open up the hearing to other people who haven't submitted written comments? And if there is time, we can get to them. So our procedures are that since we don't have them in front of us, Brian, no luck.
That's a, oh, sorry. I have not been able, well, I've been doing other things.
Yes, understood.
um, each person is given 3 minutes.
Right.
And
So
it's,
why don't we?
it's generally done
3
several
minutes.
that are for and then several that are potentially against, if so that there's equal time for both sides.
Right. So
Actually,
how
I
many
just
people
found
do we
this in
have
my
with
file.
their hands raised?
Yeah, there are 4 people with their hand raised. I was just going to go in line with that, unless someone felt differently. Okay, so we're gonna it's gonna go Dawn, then Jamie, then John, then Bill, then Pam. Okay, Dawn, Jamie, John, Bill, Pam. So
And-
Dawn, why don't you state your name and address and go from there.
Thank you. I actually was part of the reason I had my hand raised is as a person listening in, I would ask that you share what the written comments were from the community so the rest of us are aware of them. That makes sense. Is there a reason why we're not sharing that information as part of the starting point?
I believe the chair, his video just went off, but he was just saying that in the people that are actually here, he would like to have them go first, and then if they don't want to talk, we will read it into the record. So it wasn't that it wasn't going to be discussed. It was just trying to give some more respect for the people that are here.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Dawn Piccolo. I own a unit at 10 Winchester Place, Unit 104. My husband and I are longtime residents of Winchester. We fully support development in the center of town. We're very comfortable that that's what happens when you have a center area, that's a piece of property that it should be developed and used in a more robust manner. But we have significant concerns about the plan as it's proposed relative to adding significant parking challenges to the center, which is already challenged. And that the proposal of 60 spaces in a building with 60 residential units, some of them with 3 bedrooms, plus retail space is only going to create further issues to, quite frankly, the neighborhood as well as downtown. Additionally, the height of the building feels like it's just 1 story too big relative to the rest of the center. And while it will be a lovely new development and it will bring, wonderful business opportunities and additional neighbors in town, it will dominate our pretty little center, which I don't know that I think the right answer for the long-term future of Winchester is that the most dominant structure in the center of town is a condominium building. We have other pretty buildings, and those should be the more prominent features in our center.
Thank you, Dawn. Well under 3 minutes. We're going to go to Jamie Duvall. The floor is yours for 3.
Thank you. I have more than 3 minutes, so I will be quick and edit my points. Dawn actually was very well spoken, so I'll try to be the same. I want to make my points, and then I want to cite sections from the regulations governing Section 7.3 Center Business District, Winchester Mass Zoning Bylaw. My understanding is that these regulations carry the force of law and are enforceable. And I feel that this building does not adhere to these regulations. The first item is about size. And I realize that the PUD allows additional building area and height up to the maximum, I'm quoting here, but must fully embrace the town center design standards. So first, in terms of the proposed building, at 60 feet 8 inches, it's a bit taller than the existing Mill Pond building, and taller still with the mechanical equipment and screening. Second, in overall massing, the proposed building is 4 existing Mill Pond buildings jammed together. Walk by the site and try to envision 4 Mill Pond buildings on this site. The narrow dimension of the proposed building facing Mount Vernon and the pond is the same as the long dimension of the existing Mill Pond building. Moreover, the long dimension of the proposed building is twice as long as the long dimension of this existing building. So that just illustrates that, yes, this is a very big building. And as Dawn said, will dominate the Mill Pond and the town center. And this is not in line with section 7.3 regulations. The regulations have a lot of language about size, which like, for example, quote, height and bulk of buildings should be configured to minimize their visual dominance above the downtown's traditional 2 to 3 stories. Air handling, et cetera, quote, shall not extend beyond the maximum building height requirements. Secondly, this section 7.3 requires that, and I think this is important, a physical contextual model of the proposed building with surrounding buildings in conjunction with computer analysis be used to assess the overall massing, siting, and design. A physical model. I haven't seen one, and I really think that would help us understand what is being proposed. The other thing I noticed, the PUD 3, which is what we are, the Mill Pond site building is part of the planned unit development 3, includes not only the Mill Pond site, but also all the single-story buildings within the block along Main and Mount Vernon streets. So it doesn't include Bookends and Lucia's, but all the other buildings. And the goal of gaining 65 new residential units in the PUD 3 is not limited to the Mill Pond site, but rather
would you
to be
like, sorry to interrupt, would
distributed
you,
over the entire block. Yeah?
Jamie, sorry, would you like 2 more, would you like 2 more minutes?
Yeah, I
Okay,
really would. Thank you.
we'll give you 2 more minutes and it will keep moving.
Okay,
if you
and I'll
don't mind.
file this with you for the records.
Please.
Yeah, and the other thing is the form, I think other people have used the word is monolithic, and it doesn't, quote, promote and protect Winchester small town character. And I can go into why it's monolithic. I'm going to just skip that. The other thing is the bulky proportions result in deep living units. So there's a lot of interior space far from the windows. And typically large residential buildings have a landscape court if they're that large with 60 units, like in an H plan, an L plan, or a U-shaped plan. Interestingly, in the 7.3 regulations, if you look at the Winchester Town Center plan for the Mill Pond building site, they suggest 2 separate buildings, one the footprint of the existing 1912 laundry, and then an L-shaped additional building, which is thinner, probably would have brighter units with a larger landscaped open space overlooking the pond to the east and south, which I wish maybe we had considered before we did all sorts of iterations of a large rectangle. There's other language too, which I'm going to skip. I do feel like this approach is more in keeping with the small town character of Winchester Center, et cetera. The other item is the roof, which is pretty much flat. The proposed building does not step back until the 5th floor, and then it remains chunky with box dormers extending to the building's edge and metal panel equipment screen, increasing the height even more. Winchester Center is in a river valley, so we see these roofs not just from the street, but from the hillsides. Quoting section 7.3, as buildings increase in height above 2 or 3 stories, they should be shaped to increasingly slender and broken down in scale towards the top. Quote, buildings must provide animated silhouettes that enliven views from the open space, downtown neighborhoods, hills, et cetera. They also encourage 2nd and 3rd floor residential roof terraces. In other words, not so much this monolithic rectangle, which we've seen over and over again. So in summary, really quickly, the building program to me appears too ambitious for the site, making it very difficult to architecturally satisfy section 7.3 regulations. And finally, we do need a physical model, it appears, according to section 7.3 of the proposed project and environments as required by the regulations. Finally, I think the town is owed, I know this is difficult to hear, a design concept other than the repeated iterations of a massive rectangle, a concept more in keeping with the illustration of the PUD 3 development in the Winchester Town Center plan. And I am not anti-development. I think this can be a beautiful development with perhaps taking off a story, perhaps doing a mansard roof like Bookends, which has large gables that are unfussy and would actually work in the dimensions of what we're playing with. Also, really quick, if we took off the fifth floor
Excuse
and
me,
put the
excuse
fourth
me.
floor
Yeah,
on
I
top,
think.
Jamie,
Okay.
thank you
we would
very
have
much.
45 to 50 units
Can
instead
you
of
please
60.
send us that
Not
in?
bad. Thank
Jamie,
you.
Jamie, please send that to the board
I
and we will
absolutely
review it.
will. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time so much.
Okay,
John
Brian, please go
Serbier.
ahead.
Yep. John, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you. My name is John Serbier. I'm chair of the Winchester's Housing Partnership Board. The Housing Partnership Board has followed this project since it was first proposed. It was a beneficial project at the start. We feel it has become even stronger as a result of the many discussions between the planning board and the applicant, including extensive work with the designated peer design consultant. As a result, the Housing Partnership Board strongly recommends that this application be approved. This is a high quality architectural design that is consistent with the town center's physical character. It will enhance the attractiveness of the center and will attract additional people to live in the center. We like the proposed exterior design of the building, and in particular like the way the top floor is set back. The landscaped public open space complements the public space provided at the public library and on Sandy's Island, and in many ways completes both sides of the mill pond as a destination that people will enjoy visiting and walking along. The mix of uses will attract additional visitors to the town center, resulting in economic benefits for all businesses. There is a broad agreement that the existing laundry building with its associated surface parking lot and unused open space is one of the two ugliest locations in Winchester. Replacing this existing eyesore with this well-designed new building and public space will enhance the town center not only visually, but also economically and socially. The building also makes an important contribution to the range of people served by new housing being constructed in Winchester. 9 of the 60 units will be income restricted, with 6 serving households earning no more than 80% of the Boston area median income, and then 3 additional units serving households up to 120% of median income. We also like that a diversity of unit types and sizes have been introduced into the latest design. The suggestions the Housing Partnership Board has, though, is to consider reducing the number of studio units with corresponding increases in the number of 1 and 2 bedroom units. We think there may be too many studios in the current configuration. Finally, the Housing Partnership Board feels that the combination of a diversity of housing combined with the diversity of private and public uses is more than sufficient to allow use of the PUD zoning for this development. Thank you. And I will submit this written form of this tomorrow.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. If I could interject real quickly, the reason my video is off is because I'm having internet connectivity issues, and the less data that I use, the better. So I'm still here. Thank you.
Bill Fouche should be able to. There you go.
Hello, thank you. My name is Bill Fouche. I live at 87 Church Street. I am a retired architect, and there was a period of 4 years where I was a partner in a development firm in New Hampshire doing some major projects, including a 74-unit mid-rise condominium with underground parking. My main comment about the design of this building, the proposal, is that I believe there are 30 units listed as two-bedroom units. The units on the plan are just blocked out with no detail layout. Most of the double units on the plan do not have the exterior wall frontage to have 3 rooms that you've got to have light to, 2 bedrooms and the living area. And so I think that the developer should show his layouts for the units. And because that wouldn't, if he has to reduce the number of doubles, that would severely affect his pro forma, and that he should reconsider if my observations are correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam should be able to unmute now.
Hi, Pamela Court, Arlington Street, Precinct 5. First, I want to acknowledge the enormous amount of dedication and time and effort that the planning board and our town planner puts into all of these projects. I don't think people realize how much work you guys do. So I want to thank you for that. I'm going to be very quick. I have 4 points. Jamie Duvall made a lot of my points for me. I agree with her about the size of the building and its design. It's going to be enormous and it's going to be tall. We have a beautiful town center. It's very quaint, it's very picturesque. It really sets the entire character of our community. And this building is going to be right next to Town Hall. It's going to be right next to the library. It's going to really dominate over those things so excessively that it is going to become the defining feature for our downtown. And the way it's designed right now is not a design which, in my opinion, captures the beautiful character and picturesque look that we have now in downtown. So I'm not against this project. I'm not against development. I'm not against housing in town center. I'm very much for it. But I'd like to see them go back and do some exterior design and really think about how this building is going to fit into the town and maintain the character of the town. I thought Jamie did an excellent job discussing that. Parking, I think, is an issue. I think the number of parking spots for a building of that size with that many people and people having guests is excessive. I think that there are some things that they can do in terms of perhaps putting in a garage and adding additional parking spots. It would be interesting to see if there's some creative ways to do that. I also feel that they're doing almost the bare minimum of what they're required to for affordable units. And I think it would be nice if they could up that. And if the town can negotiate to increase the number of affordable units in this building. And finally, I'm concerned about the impact to the environment that this building is going to have. It's going to be very large, it's going to be very heavy. If they do any kind of underground work, it could possibly change the water table, which could impact the mill pond. It could impact flooding in the neighboring buildings. It's something that I think would be interesting to hear what the Conservation Commission has to say about it. And I also think it should include a really detailed analysis by an engineering firm that understands how these things impact the water table and the local environment, because this is something that could end up being really problematic. So it would be nice to see some sort of analysis to ensure that we are not doing anything detrimental to any other building or any other feature, natural or man-made, in that area. Again, what Jamie Doll had said, and I just want to echo, I think having a physical model of the building with the downtown would really make it more abundantly clear how much this is going to dominate the entire center of our wonderful community. Thank you.
And excuse me, David Anderson, then we'll go Craig Rabe, and then Jane Netton offer. So, Dave Anderson.
Hi, my name is David Anderson. I was on the design review committee for 9 years. And I've now been on the Winchester Center train station committee for 10 years. I never thought that would go on so long, but that the awareness of that project is one of the things that has attracted my attention to this one. And one of the elements that, one of the design elements that we on the committee have worked, struggled with the MBTA and the project architects and engineers on that much larger project is understanding and appreciating the view corridors that pass through the middle of town, and that the added height and mass of the train station project would have an important visual impact on the view from Mount Vernon Street toward the Congregational Church, for example, and looking back from next to the Common back toward Town Hall, the Stanton block where Bookends is, and so on. And so I think that caught my attention as an issue when I was looking at the elevation drawings for this building. So I think the height may be a little bit much, but it may be allowable. I'm one of the few people, I think Jamie and I agreed that the laundry building was not a terrible building. It was a terrible renovation of a decent building. And the renovation made the scale of the building seem worse than it actually is. And I think the massing of this proposal along the street edge shares some of those problems. So I think the Stanton block and the Brown building, the firehouse across the street, they set something of a limit for the height along the street edge, and I think it is totally fine to have a step back at after the third story, say possibly the fourth story, and step back from there. I'm really more worried about the full height of the building, or 5 stories of it rising up at the street edge. I understand the concern that Pam Court had about looking from Town Hall, sort of from the riverside, but I think that the center of the block, sort of, if you imagine the block extending through to CVS, that I imagine that sort of interior part of the block could also have greater height at some point in a future development, and I think that would be okay. I think
David,
it's
would you
just
like
the
2 more
height
minutes?
along. Yes, please.
All right, 2 more minutes.
I think it's the height along the edges where that height is, where you're not looking at it from a distance, but where it's sort of literally right on top of you is the problem. So I think that it's also a consideration along the where it bends along the Aberjona, sort of toward the face of Town Hall. I'm less concerned at Converse Place. It'll be a little bit canyony, but I think that's sort of acceptable in the middle of the block. So I think a lot of the design elements are really quite positive and skillfully done. I think the frontage onto the pond is well executed. I think that will, if it's integrated into the bike path that should become more of a bike path, I think that will really be an asset. But I really think it's the massing along the street edges where this building is seen in context with the other towers. The little conical tower above Bookends, the firehouse tower, the town hall tower, the Baptist church, sort of farther up the street. I think it needs to be seen in that context, and so I trust that can be done.
Thanks, David. I'm gonna move on to, it'll go Craig and then Jane. Craig Robbie, go right ahead.
Okay, good. You've unmuted me.
Yes, go for it. You got the floor is yours.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. So Craig Robbie, 17 Hutchinson Road, Winchester. I'm the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the chamber or the board. But this is the kind of project that the chamber is looking for to bring businesses and people downtown and keep our downtown vibrant. So I'm really excited to see this building where it's at. I think it's a beautiful design. And I love the setbacks of the higher floor, so you really aren't going to see the sixth floor from the street level. And with some of the design that I saw, it looks, residential with some greenage on the courtyards of those upper decks along the edges. I thought really nice. This is also a great project to bring affordable housing downtown. And so the only way to, it seems to me the way to bring affordable housing downtown is a size of this building. And so it's nice to see the setbacks on the sixth floor. And if there's some other things that people think might be too obtrusive for scale, I mean, I think 6 floors is necessary for a project this size to bring the affordable housing downtown. There's a way to make it less, appear so high, not appear so high on the street, great, but I think the design's beautiful. I think it'll be a great asset to the downtown. I think the designs that I've seen are great. There might be some questions regarding the entrance, and that's certainly up for debate and can certainly be changed. I think the parking, I commend the design for actually going above and beyond the required spaces for this many units, which is helpful. 60 units though, there will be more than 60 cars in this building. So the town's gonna need to figure out a way to accommodate the extra parking between this and the waterfill lot. The town's gonna have to do something to address the additional parking needs. But I commend the developers for having more parking than is required for zoning. And so hopefully the town will be able to address that kind of issues. And I think this is a great development. I hope this gets done in a timely manner. That'll bring more people downtown and keep the businesses strong. Our biggest challenge is what do we do for businesses downtown to keep it vibrant? And this is one of those buildings that will make it happen and keep it vibrant. So, and the size, I think, the more people we can have concentrated downtown, the better. But it doesn't need to, without it being too obtrusive to the downtown. But I think it fits great with the town. And I think they've taken a great effort to match the architecture of the surrounding buildings.
Thanks, Craig. When you do Jane Nettenhofer and then Carol Savage after Jane. Should be able to unmute now, Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Ettenhofer. I've been in Winchester for 52 years. My parents have been here for close to 65 years. I just want to say the space is extremely valuable, but I do think the building is too large for the space in Winchester Center. I'd like to see further development, but I want to retain the feeling of a village with open space and just maintain some very smart growth in our town. Architecture is a very important element in regards to the train station renovation and to any additional new buildings, along with, in specific, the height to this building, the parking overall with the amount of units and the number of cars per household. And I also think a structural model would be very helpful for residents to see. But again, I do enjoy hearing all these comments, and I just want to thank you for letting me share my comments.
Thank you. Carol Savage, why don't you go right ahead?
Hi, thanks very much. So I'll be quick. I just have mostly questions about the parking related issues. As I understand it, this building would have an automated parking garage that I don't know how that exactly would work and whether there are any concerns about the speed at which cars would be entering and exiting the building, whether it could cause traffic issues. So I guess that's just a larger question I have around the development with this scale in the center of town. Parking has become a number one issue around, or a predominant issue around the Waterfield development. So traffic, parking, precedent for a building this size in the center of town, and how we're managing that for not only this project, but other projects that this could set a precedent for, is my main concern. It does seem like the idea of having a model built would also be useful, as others have mentioned. So just emphasizing the parking and traffic implications of this development are my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like, Diab, there are two people that have spoken already. I didn't know if you wanted to go into the two emails that we received today and then go back. We have one from James Drake and one from Guillaume O'Connell.
Right, and we also, so our hearing is, we have set aside an hour and a half for this, I believe. No, I'm
Correct.
sorry. We still have 45 minutes.
Correct, exactly.
Okay, right. So why don't we first go to the written comments that we got, and then we can cycle around to other people from the audience who maybe want a second bite at the apple. And then I think it would be useful if the board had time to have a discussion. And so, Brian, if you want to go ahead with those written comments.
So one of the written comments that oh, double action there. One of the written comments is has their hand up now as a new person, Guillaume. So I think it might make sense to go to him because he was the written comment I was just about to read. So
Sure. Why don't we have him?
We go straight to him? Guillaume, go right ahead. You should be able to unmute. I'm asking him. The button should be there, but whoop. Try one more time, Guillaume. I think you clicked it on and off. There we go.
Great. This is DM O'Connell, 10 Bacon Street, Winchester. I have made several comments before at various presentations with respect to the project. And I just wanted to reinforce tonight a couple of points. And I think Jamie Duval, actually, one of the disadvantages of coming late is that other people make the same comments in advance of you. So, but first of all, I do acknowledge that there have been some positive refinements in the design over the past number of months. But there is a very fundamental underlying problem with the scale of this project. And when I say scale, I really mean scale and mass of the project. And it's my professional and personal opinion that this development is just too massive and too monumental for the downtown, and it doesn't bear any relationship to the abutting contextual fabric of the town. And so, and I don't believe, as I think I might have pointed out before, that I don't think the perspective images actually do justice to and accurately reflect the reality here. I'm worried about the size of it and the mass of it, basically. So I'm making a recommendation that others I seem to have made, which is, one, let's get an actual physical scale model of the property and the surrounding area, bearing in mind that the adjacent property of CVS and the rest of the PUD 3 and China Sky, that all should be looked in context of a master plan. We shouldn't be thinking of just this particular Converse Street lot. We should be looking at that entire block and looking how long-term development of the entire project will inform what we should be doing with this first phase. And I would also recommend that the developer stake out the limits of the property, the metes and bounds of the property they have in their possession. And also the corners of the building, so that one can go out on the site and see exactly where this building is in relationship to the property line. And more importantly, I would like to be able to see definitively, not on a rendering, but where the corners of the building are in relation to the pond, particularly as one thinks of the pond and the sort of sloping embankment. And I think some of the images don't actually depict accurately what's happening there. The building, in my mind, is actually going to be much closer to the pond than we see on the images. And the next point is really the laundry building that people have mentioned. And if you go, Brian, to the cover page of the presentation, you can see the laundry building in that. Could you bring that image up, Brian?
Yep, just give me a sec. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Can you, oops, sorry. Is it not sharing? You should be able to see PDF.
We are seeing a blank screen, a black screen, I should say, sorry.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate.
While you work on that, Brian, as I think it was Jamie Duvall said, you know, the laundry building, and I had mentioned it before, we're lucky insofar as it's exactly the same height effectively as the proposed new development. And I have taken and measured the floor plate of that building. It's 3,200 square feet. And the proposed average square footage of the new development is about 16,000 square foot. It depends between 13 and a half and 17, but an average of about 16,000 square feet. So in effect, it's not actually 4. There are 5 footprints of the building, the laundry building, in the new development. So it's 5 times the size in footprint and 5 times the mass of the entire building, extending up to 60 feet. It's a very, very big building, and it doesn't bear any relationship to the scale, character, and fabric of the town. There are a couple of other general comments I make, and I'm running out of time, but let's look at that PUD 3 and make sure that we look at the master plan for the entire block when we're looking at modeling. With respect to the Woonurf that we talked about, in reality, I've gone down there with respect to servicing of China Sky, CVS, and access to the new building for parking and other. I can't see a Woonurf existing in that particular atmosphere. There's just too much traffic, too much servicing, and it would be very difficult. I'm not sure exactly how the automated parking works. It's a sort of a new idea, but I'm hopeful that that can be explained in better detail. One of the biggest problems I have, in a way, is I do not believe that people understand or comprehend or are aware of this project. And I'm actually I wouldn't be very surprised if when people start seeing this building rise up from the basement here, when they drive down on their way home from South Border Road down Mount Vernon Street, come by the town hall and they see the steel coming up, and they see steel number 1, first floor going up. Well, they say they've started building. The second floor goes up of steel. Oh, wow, this is moving along. Third floor goes up of steel. Then they say, wow, that's big. I never knew that. The next day they drive by, it's 4 stories of steel. And then 5 stories of steel. And I think that the town is going to be aghast when they figure out what's actually happening, if anything like is actually constructed. You know, I'm reminded of the Johnny Cochran, O.J. Simpson trial when it says the famous line, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. This doesn't fit, you must admit. This building is way too big. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I unfortunately, I don't know why this happens, but I'm not able to share my screen. When I show it, it shows a blank. It shows a blank screen. There were two. There were 3 letters that we received. One was from the resident who just spoke. The other was from Tara Dubman, and I don't believe she is here. And it's a paragraph. It's easily, I could read it into the record. I think it makes sense. It's certainly under 3 minutes, so I'm going to go right into that. Over the last several months, so this is Tara Dubman at 8 Yale Street. Over the last several months, I've attended a few meetings about 10 Converse Place, and I've seen a couple of different presentations, the most recent version being in late September. While the building design is aesthetically pleasing enough, it is far too large for the space. It does not fit the existing character of the downtown, specifically the quote village atmosphere. The proposed structure would completely dominate the town center and seems much better suited to Boston or Cambridge, but definitely not Winchester. The historical images provided in the last presentation were particularly interesting and are a nice representation of the village atmosphere with 3 different buildings of different heights and more green space than what is currently proposed. In this same image, you can see the shadows cast. The proposed building is both quite tall and has a very large footprint and would therefore cast a very large shadow at various times of the day, leaving some nearby areas in the dark. This often happens in cities, but not in our town center currently, which thankfully has no single huge structure dominating the view from every angle. The additional traffic due to the large number of residencies is another concern, but the primary concern is that the building design is not scaled appropriately for the town. The proposed building should not be squeezed into the space at the sacrifice of our town center character and open and green space. The building should be shorter and or have a significantly smaller footprint and or be broken into multiple buildings of varying heights with more green space allotted to not disrupt the downtown village atmosphere. Again, this was Tara Dubman, 8 Yale Street. And there is one more that is shorter than that I will read into the record now. The planning board received this as well this afternoon, or this evening rather. This is from James Drake, who is 5 Mystic Ave, Winchester. Hello, planning board. I've been living near Winchester Center for 11 plus years and walk there every day to shop, dine, and take care of errands. I strongly support the development as currently proposed at 10 Converse Place. This is an opportunity to remove the only major eyesore in town and replace it with an exceptionally designed mixed-use property that will greatly improve the streetscape, activate the riverfront, and bring much-needed housing near our commuter rail station. We are very lucky to have such a thoughtful and well-designed project to consider, and I hope you'll look past the NIMBYs who oppose every project in town and wish to keep Winchester like it was in the 1950s. Let's not let this happen here. After many years of rejecting sound and reasonable proposals for 5 to 6 story development in downtown Newburyport, that town is now looking at a 230 unit 40B project. Thank you for your consideration, James Drake. Those are all the letters that we received up until this time. Previously, we went through all the boards and committees. Diab, I see there are now 4 hands up, all of which have spoken, but we definitely have time, and that's why we're here. But
Well,
it's up to your time in terms of how much time you want to give them.
Well, I would love to get the boards to have some discussion from the board. My question of the people whose hands are raised is, are you going to provide us any different input than we have already received? Just so that if someone has already made the comment you're about to make, then I would ask you to reconsider whether you wish to speak. So why don't we set aside, since all these people have already spoken, why don't we start with 2 minutes apiece, and hopefully if they can, we'll just leave it at 2 minutes, and then that will get us, it only gets the board 20 minutes to speak. Well, let's see if we can get it to 1.5 minutes. since you've already had the chance to speak. Brian, you can go down the list.
All right, Dawn, you should be able to unmute a minute and a half.
Yep, thank you. I only wanted to add one additional comment, which is as I actually do live directly across the street from where this building is going to be built. And while I do respect everyone's feedback and thoughts on the parking challenges, I will share with you, without a solution for where those 60 condo owners are going to put their cars, we will have a significant problem. And while I respect the representative from the chamber, who lives in the town, but is also representing the chamber, the Waterfield project does not solve the parking challenge that this building is going to bring to this side of town. There is already currently parking challenges, and 60 units, several of them with more than one bedroom, are going to absolutely have 2 cars. And in the proposal from the developer and with the planning board's feedback, I think it would be beneficial for the community to understand where those extra cars are going to be. So where will that second car be located? It won't be in the Jenks lot. Where will that second car be? They'll need a home for it. And as we assess this proposal, we need to deal with that reality. And we can't turn a blind eye and say it'll be solved somewhere else. It needs to be solved with the approval of this project. And again, I am a neighbor of this property, and I 100% support the development of it. I just think we need to solve that rather than kicking the can down the field and saying it'll be solved by somebody else.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bill Fouche.
Hi, I clicked again because of the parking comments. I did a little research, and I have learned that the developer is proposing a U-TRON system. And Utron has a website. It's it's fascinating website. And apparently they're proposing a slide system, Utron slide. They have 2 different systems. And I recommend you go to it because it's so fascinating. There aren't many, it's an Israeli company. There aren't many units built in the United States, and most of them are high-rise garages, 3, 4, 5 level garages. There is one in the Boston area, apparently, at 40 Rugg Road, Alston, and apparently it's student housing, related to student housing. So that's a piece of information I wanted to share with the group. And I will follow up with an email about my concerns that the developer cannot achieve the mix of bed units that he has summarized in his application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was a minute and 15 seconds. Excellent. Who is our Brian? Who's next?
Last hand, Karen.
Has Karen spoken before? I don't.
No, this is a new hand.
Okay, so Karen, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Karin Galil. I live at 31 Wildwood Street. I am not going to reiterate comments I agree with. I agree with Jamie DeBole's comments and the other comments about massing, and I'm sensitive to the parking issue. I totally believe there should be development in town. I'd like to make a slightly different suggestion, which might have been raised at meetings I wasn't at. Sorry if I'm repeating anything that was said before, but to make Winchester lively, we don't just need some green spaces that people ride a bike through or walk through. We need places that you hang out. And so I would love to see a master plan that gets rid of the street by China Sky and makes a waterfront that is not simply some green grass that is never used, but actually has restaurants and cafes facing our absolutely beautiful waterfront. So it becomes a very safe and quiet place to spend like a community center where you have dinner, where you have coffee, where you talk, where you walk without traffic racing by, which is something we've realized is really important in the pandemic. And to achieve that, I think we need the building to be set back further. But I think we really need to recognize that one of the most aesthetic things about Winchester is the waterfront, and we don't use it. And if we have a big building and a strip of, grass and some plantings, we're going to waste the last opportunity to create a sort of magical, almost European waterfront. I don't know if that's been thought about before, but I would love to see a master plan that creates village life at all times of day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's everybody at the moment. Was the idea for now the planning board, we got 25 minutes, 5 minutes apiece to
Yeah, I think
give comment and questions questions.
I think that it would be, comments and questions. Do we want questions of the developer? Is that something we want to just have written down and then have a written response that come later, or do we want to have them answer right now? If we have questions answered now, that we run the risk of running over everyone's time. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, if you have a question, we'll write it down. If there is time after everyone has spoken, then we can get the developer's response this evening. Otherwise, we will get it offline and come back. So everyone has 5 minutes. Or why don't we say everyone has 3 minutes, and then that'll give us time to get to questions. How's that? Why don't I go from right to left on my screen? So that is I Ching. I Ching, do you want to say something?
She's going to be back in just 2 minutes, she said.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we go next to Kurt Spring?
Sure. So I don't, have like a 5-minute sort of monologue or reaction, I guess. I mean, I think we should have a dialogue. I don't know. It seems like that might be helpful, but I can tell you, I think my reaction, I think that, we've received a lot of feedback about massing and height of the building, as well as, park. I kind of just took some notes as everyone was speaking. And I think, there seems like there's some key concerns, then also some key, I think, focuses of those who are in favor, and even those who are opposed acknowledge that there's benefits of the project. So maybe one thing I can do is just mention a couple of things that I'm hearing and perhaps agree with on each side, which is, on the size. I do think the height, based on what's presented, does feel, particularly tall relative to some of the other buildings in downtown. And then I think the setback of the 5th floor is certainly helpful. I think there's some comment about maybe above the 2nd and 3rd floor starting to see a little bit more stepping back, mansard roof, something like that, just what brings the scale down a little bit closer to the street level, which I think personally does feel like it would help solve for some of the height. I do think my own opinion on the massing piece is that if you look at just an aerial of downtown, and I understand it's multiple buildings, but I mean, effectively the massing of, China Sky, where Lucia is a CVS, all those buildings, collectively, like that's one mass. It's actually, I think, larger than the proposed mass here. So I mean, massing doesn't necessarily strike me as a concern for me, at least, given I think there already are large masses of similar, square footage in downtown. They just have to be made up of, multiple buildings that have, abutting firewalls. But the height, I understand. Parking, I have to admit, one question I have that I don't know if maybe some of the other board members know, or maybe Brian, maybe Winchester Place, which is obviously another large, fairly new condo development downtown. Do you know how many units that has and how many parking spaces that has per unit?
I do not know that, but my guess was it probably has 2.
2 per unit. Okay.
But I don't know. But my guess now that I see Dawn's hand up that she might even know.
Okay.
Why don't we get that question answered later?
Dawn, are you?
Wait,
you have some inside information?
Yeah, Winchester Place. There are 11 condominiums. Probably 70% of them, as a matter of fact, I think Paul Albiani, the Albianis are on as well. They could answer, they were the builders, but there are 11 units in the building. Probably 70% of them have 2 parking spots. The units all are 2-bedroom. So they're 2-bedroom, majority have 2 parking spots. There's 1 visitor spot. And we all deal with the parking issue, and we largely have 2 spots per unit.
Okay.
Thanks for that
Thanks.
info. Back to you,
Yeah.
Kurt.
Yes, I guess I think the concerns cited about parking are valid. I mean, I think that it is most likely that, most of these units will, will be occupied by multiple residents who own vehicles. So there'll be, likely more than 1 car per unit. So I mean, I think this is something that I sort of recognize as a concern and being a valid concern in my own opinion. And I think going just back to like the height of the building, I think someone made a comment too about shadows, and that is, I think, something that is, worth just considering. I mean, if you have a 5-story building, there is going to be, considerable amount of shadows, over the area. And I think some of the renderings the developer provided show, some of what that could be. But maybe flipping to some of the positives, I mean, I think I heard a lot of people mention activating the waterfront. I think I completely agree. And I actually think the last speaker, Karen, I know she mentioned, wanting more waterfront and seeing more setbacks. So you could really have more space there. But she also just highlighted, how great it would be to have a restaurant and a cafe space and activate that waterfront. I will say, like, this project does that. I mean, I think my sense from reading the notes from prior meetings and reading the developers' comments is that they took some of the feedback and actually moved the retail from, the street side there back to the waterfront to try and actually address some of those requests, I think, from folks to really activate that area and create sort of a green space and something there. So I thought that seemed like that was actually a positive that the project.
Kurt, I'm just going to interject that you're at 4 minutes,
Okay,
including a digression for parking at Winchester Place.
Okay. Well, my last comment was, I think the comments too about removing an eyesore, that could be a personal, it certainly is a personal opinion that I share with others. I think the current building is unsightly and doesn't really fit in the downtown, frankly. I think the proposed building fits much better than the current building does in the downtown. And I love the fact that we add affordable units and housing to Winchester. So this is my first time partaking in this sort of dialogue and commentary, but those are just sort of some of my observations. And that's kind of all I'll share for now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let me go back to my original. So I Ching, we were trying to get to 3 minutes so that we'd have time for questions. So let's start with you at 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I was hearing a lot about massing also, and it's interesting that some of the boards, the design review and the historical commission have, really lauded it, the project. But the people who are less familiar with it, I think are in a little bit of shock, who haven't been in conversations. So I know they're aiming, the proponents are aiming for 3.0 FAR. As of right, Brian, what do they have? Brian?
Is Brian alive? I think Brian
anyway.
I believe I do not have my regs in front of me. Why don't I find that out to make sure I don't?
Oh, it's okay. But I when we were sort of doing iterations of the 3.0, there were. It seems like it's either too tall or too wide, and 3.0 is a real big number for the FAR. So I don't know if that's negotiable. And the street side stuff, I think I want to go to that. Is the previous board had recommended some residential stuff along the riverside. That just doesn't make sense to me. I agree with the comment about the units, 2-bedroom units on such a narrow street front doesn't seem like is possible. So I'm surprised by the lack of retail. So there's just one actual retail space. and then some amenities for the residents. So along the river edge, I would even like argue for more commercial space so that we can liven it up. You know, people are working from home a lot more. Like we would need like ramen in the middle of the day, or you know, whatever. I think more services and more business opportunities there would be great. As for housing, I also agree with you know, increasing the number of affordable housing and also middle housing. You know, we don't need any more super expensive condos, I think, and the more like the denominator, the number of units that we do build increases the denominator. And if we can, you know, we need to catch up with the numerator and increase that number with affordable or middle housing. And you know, some negotiable points might be a deed restriction for, you know, resident only non-rentals kind of a thing to increase the affordability of these things. And yeah, those are sort of my 3 thoughts.
Okay, and that's in at 3 minutes. And the FAR is 1.5 by right, 2.5 by special permit, and you get up to 3 with the PUD.
I see.
And I think we have lost our town planner.
I'm back now, if you can
Oh,
hear me.
you are. We can hear
Yeah,
you.
my power surge went and restarted my modem, so I got kicked off of everything.
Okay.
But everything seems to be back.
And you're now buried on a side screen of all the people on here. Okay, let's see, who's next in line is Sally Dale.
Yes, so thank you, Deb. Brian, I had sent a list of questions to you that touch on the areas of concern that I'm particularly focused on at this point. And I wondered if I could screen share just to quickly walk through them, not to get answers, but to just show the list of questions to give us a sense of the range of issues that I want to talk about.
Yeah, you should be able to hit the green button and share your screen right now.
Share. Uh-oh, here we go. Oh gosh, sorry. Yes. Okay. So I wanted to say that there's aspects of this project that I'm hugely in support of, especially the fact that it's adding housing to town and that it's bringing vitality and more commercial space to the town. Because I only have 3 minutes, I don't want to go through all of those points, but I have given this to Brian to give to the applicant, and so it can become part of the record. And I also really like the ground floor residential and the waterfront commercial and the studio to 3-bedroom mix and the affordable housing mix. I do agree with the public hearing speakers who wanted to examine the mix of studios to 3 bedrooms and the affordable housing component. I do know that one of the PUD requirements is that you provide, in the code, it says more than the required affordable housing. So one of my questions below relates to that. So I wanted to know whether the building height, which is on the narrative, it's reads 60 feet, but in fact on the drawings it's 60.8. If that could just be noted that there was an inconsistency between 60 and 60.8. And that with you adding in the rooftop mechanical screening, I was curious what the height is. And then there are 4 context elevation pages, and I wanted to have more information put on them for the entire length of Mount Vernon Street, both sides. So that's detailed there. And I wanted to say that I didn't think that it was constructive to those images to put graphic depictions of structures that are in the background or not on Mount Vernon Street. That's just a personal view. But there's a question that I have in the zoning that it says the maximum height of a structure shall not exceed the distance in feet as set forth in the map, which is 58, except under the conditions that domes and towers and spires that are not used for living purposes, chimneys, and then heating and ventilation systems can't be more than 4 feet or the minimum height required by the building code. And I wanted to know if they could provide any information on building code requirements. for that.
Sally,
sorry, my
you're at 250.
Okay, so let me just give you, the other topics are open space definition and calculation, affordable housing and FAR, issues about Converse Place, issues about parking, issues about the automated parking system, and concerns about loading and trash location, and particularly bicycle parking. So it's a lot of questions, and I just wanted to put that into the record. And I know that Brian has said that the proponent or the applicant would be answering these. So there's my thoughts right now.
Okay. Thank you. Our next contestant is Cheryl. Cheryl, you have not unmuted yet.
No, I am. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'd just like to thank all of the people who spoke tonight. There's some really thoughtful comments that were made, and I'm, have some thoughts about those comments. Mostly, I'd just like to say that there is a lot of support for the design of this building, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. I think, though, that it is in a really tough location for us, and right now it's presenting itself more as a very large condo building. And one point that has been made, and I think it's true, is that is really out of context to our village of Winchester. And I think the design, though, did try to have each side of the building address a different program and create a different type of scale. And I think that could be much more successful if, in fact, some of the things, I think I-Ching brought up, the amenities for the building being on the street level. I think that's a lost opportunity to bring more commercial, small village type. I also think that the Converse Place could be much more like Thompson Street. Right now, it's the entrance to a parking garage. It's an electric room. There's some really nice bones there, and start to making it, a wider view corridor. But it needs to be a street in our village. And I think that we don't know what's going to happen with the CVS building, but we do know the PUD is going to encourage a lot more lively sort of town, small businesses and restaurants. And I think that's what that side of the building needs to get developed as. So I would just say that we need to really focus on the commercial at the base of this building and make sure that it really becomes part of the village and not just, access to a condo building. And I think that having, gated courtyards in front of the apartments on the pond side is also just reinforcing this more privatized, large condo building. I think that needs to be a park. It needs to be activated. I love the fact that the bike path goes through there. But again, the design is really trying to address the possibility that each side of this block could be part of the village in unique ways. So I think that the design team can just continue to try to bring more program for the village to that first level. And I'm actually more in favor of one less story. So I think that those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you much. I guess I put off my comments as long as I can. Let's see, what time do we have? It's at 8:52. So let me first thank everyone who commented today. Incredibly thoughtful comments that came through. I think the thing that I take away is that, again, I think what Cheryl picked up was the concept that this building, people think that it looks like a large condo and does not fit in with the village nature. Now, I believe, and I agree with Kurt, there's a lot of massing. If you go across the street, across Mount Vernon up, you will find all the way up to Winchester Place, there's lots of massing there too. So the place does have large buildings. Place across the street, I believe, it covers 100% of the lot. I like the fact that the different sides have been designed to fit in with their surroundings. I share Cheryl's concern about the gated yards. I was a little dismayed to see that it was as a new element. I don't have a problem with the size of the building. I think that, you know, we're at the point where we have to look at what is, so the reason we're at a PUD level is we have to ask, does this building meet the requirements of the PUD? And that requirement is actually sort of vaguely stated as more diverse housing choices. I think that they have the petitioner has done work on that in terms of getting in different size units. The concerns about whether they are livable that have been put forward by other people, I hadn't appreciated that. I think it is important to make sure they are all livable units in terms of getting enough lighting, etc. I think that I don't have a problem with the height. I do think that stepping it back further might make it less massive on Mount Vernon. One of the people talked about the importance of bringing it down to scale where it meets the pedestrian spots where you would actually be up next to the building. So I think that the design has in some ways improved. I kind of miss some of the elements of the previous design, but I do think it has improved. I think the big takeaway I get from listening to people, and I find myself agreeing with them, is that we need to make sure that this doesn't just look like a big condo building, that it does share some of the I don't want to say peculiarities of architecture. I'm missing the word there, but that it brings a little lightness to that area. I think that is a concern that people have, is that it does appear heavy. I think that we can go through, I'm already at 324. So I think the important part now is to iterate through the design, and let me stop there. So it is now, we have 4 minutes left. At this point, we do have to, as a board, I don't know if there's much more to go on in this hearing right now. We do have to talk about design consultants. Unless anyone wants to add anything, I think we can close this part, or we can, Brian, are you still there? Sorry,
Yeah.
you've disappeared.
No, my internet connections keep saying unstable, so I'm turning off my video, but
Okay,
I am
right.
jacked
So,
in here.
Yeah, it's just not having your face right there is somehow disconcerting. Yeah. So
You
why
can
don't
just stop there, yeah.
Yeah, I can just stop there. Yeah, we're not to get too mushy. So I think so at this point, I think we can close off this part of the public hearing. I think it's time for the development team to take in the inputs they've heard and come back to us. And I think we will probably have another round of public hearing as we go on. So what we do need to talk about are design consultants. And Brian, if you could bring us up to date on who our candidates are for those.
Sure. So there are 2 firms that are available and have that I've reached and made contact with. One is Dennis Carlone, and one is Ann Beha Architects, ABA. So they're both willing to meet, at a planning board meeting. I haven't been able to tell them much information because we're about to enter town meeting So I don't know when we're going to be having them in. That was the only kind of discussion, but that's kind of more scheduling that we actually can do about email. So that's going to be fine. But I wanted to let everyone know that those are the two firms that have available and ready to work.
Okay, and we're okay with the other consultants that we have. Traffic is
So Tool has given us a scope and fee, and VHB. We have also gotten that. We just haven't given them the notice to proceed because we've just requested the checks from the applicant like this week. So
okay.
Once the checks are deposited, then that's the notice to proceed. But Tool, Design, and VHB, we are ready. Are ready.
Okay, so they can go whenever they need to. Okay.
So maybe just the next step here for us is to schedule. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's going to be before town meeting. So town meeting is at 7 o'clock, all nights. Typically we meet 30 minutes before. That's typically what we do. It's not really enough time to talk about design consultants or interviewing people. So, it has to be at like a regular meeting.
Right. So why don't we do
2 weeks from now?
Right. So we need to continue this. And so if we need to continue it to a time certain.
But Dia, before we do that, can I ask Brian a question about the consultants? From the list that was generated earlier in the year, there was one firm that when I went through all the websites that I liked, and I think it's called Util, and that was one that I wondered if you had reached out to.
So I did reach out to UTL, and this was the person that I Ching was familiar with.
Oh,
they weren't able to do it.
I see. Okay, good to know.
Time-wise.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, now my calendar is confusing me. Okay, so Brian, when we are
Yeah, so the next time that we meet as a regular meeting would be the 9th, 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
So I would say to put it on the next agenda at
so
at 7:30. Yeah.
Are members of the board open to meeting in between to take on this special topic?
we would, well, I believe this would be part of our, we have to postpone to a time certain.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So we would have to, I think this is the easiest way to do it because it's
So the determination of continuation of hearing is the one that needs the time certain.
Yes, and the consultant discussion is part of this whole hearing, so has to be scheduled that way. So Brian, instead of at 7:30, can we do it at 7:45 so that we can get our usual updates?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone just has to make that motion for 7:45 on the 9th.
Right. So the motion would be to continue the hearing on 10 Converse Place until the 9th of November 2021 at 7:45. Would someone please make that motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. Let's do a roll call vote, please. Kurt?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sally?
Aye.
I Ching?
Aye.
And Dib, aye, 5-0. So once again, thank you very much to everyone who came and gave us your wisdom this evening. Please continue to send any written comments to planningboard@winchester.us. That goes to all of the planning board members as well as the town planner. So we will all see it. And please keep your comments coming. They're very much appreciated. So thanks to the applicants for sitting by and listening. And we are moving on to our next part of our agenda, which is a discussion of 22 Harley Road, pre-application meeting. Brian, do you want to lead this one off?
Sure. Amy and Joe Wren own 22 Ardley Road. There was a preliminary subdivision plan for 3 houses that was applied for about 2 years ago, but they were unable to move forward due to the width of the lot. They would not allow this horseshoe style road to be built. It would require several additional waivers. So there's really no way to kind of make that happen. There's not enough frontage for even a second house on this lot. And to build out the entire road that was previously laid out was going to be extremely cost prohibitive. So a solution kind of presented itself here when the planning board, the 2 town meetings ago, put in a section 4.5 waivers for historic resources preservation. So this is very similar to the 88 Harvard Street situation that we've been going through for the past several months. So 22 Ardley is a historic resource. It's by a prominent architect. It merits preservation. The Wrens are trying to determine what they need to do to the current resource to satisfy the historical commission in order to use the preservation of 22 Ardley to create 1 additional lot with this substandard frontage. So in theory, this is exactly what the bylaw really had intended to do, is give people an incentive to preserve a resource instead of tearing it down. And it's really at this point, it's, if the details of the existing house can be signed off on by the historical commission, I would definitely be in favor of the concept of the waiver for this property. This is essentially what the waiver was made to do, is to give someone an incentive to do exactly what they're doing. So they have already met with the historical commission, and the nitty-gritty details of exactly all of those conditions that they would want to see on the existing house have not been worked out. But in theory, they are on board with working with the Wrens. Sorry for that really long-winded, but it's been a long story. Amy, if you wanted to go ahead, you should be able to unmute. Yep.
So do we have some sort of plot plans and such, the layout, so that we can see?
Yeah, I should be able to get that up, hopefully, if my screen is working. If not,
I was on the board at the time that the subdivision was applied for and was turned down by the board. There were some. So why don't it's just that I do have some knowledge of this, but the rest of the board doesn't. So why don't we?
Are you seeing this PDF?
We are seeing, you scroll by the original building permit.
Yeah, this is the beginning. I will let Amy kind of take over here, but at least this is working.
That is working. Is there a plot layout of this?
I think is on page 7.
Okay.
If we go down, oh, sorry.
Yeah, not 7.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I thought it was on my page 7. Here we go.
Okay.
One up.
Back up. Okay. There we go.
There we go. There we go.
So if you could point out where Ardley Road is on this, because I think there's a road in there somewhere.
So the Ardley Road itself, the finished portion of Ardley Road is actually right at the top of the first lot there. And then if you see the cluster of riprap, which is to the left of the house there, that's actually the paper road. So Ardley Road turns into Ardley Place right at the paper road and goes further down. And it continues into a cul-de-sac.
And could you define what a paper road is, please?
A paper road is a road that was intended to be built, but was never actually finished. So it's on the town map as a road, but has never actually been developed. That's my understanding.
Is it passable by vehicle at the moment, or?
Not even close.
There is a part of the section that is closest to my house you could get to the back lot from.
However, it is really not, it is impassable. It drops quite a bit. It's not a road, and it goes directly into the cemetery. So if you look at the square lot in the back, the abutter on the back side of that lot is actually Wildwood Cemetery. So on the bottom of the page.
Okay, and if you could identify which lot is your lot, is it the one right here?
Well, technically I own both of them, but the first lot that looks like a pizza pie,
Yes.
that is where the house currently sits.
Okay.
And this is actually a proposed, the house isn't quite that. There's some changes clearly for what I had intended with the Historical Commission originally.
Okay, so what you're showing us is a proposed subdivision with the line going between the two structures is where you want to draw a new line.
Actually, those are the registered lots. That hasn't changed. The front lot is, I think, 56B or 56A, and then the back lot is 56B.
So yeah, so technically this would this would not be a subdivision, meaning that a new road is not being built. What this is a new buildable lot is being created in order to save this historic resource, and it's going to be more like a shared driveway. So this is technically, I do not believe that this is going to be subdivision.
Okay, so the lot where the lower lot, as it were, on this picture, that structure does not exist.
Does not exist, no.
And that is the lot which you wish to build on.
That has no frontage.
It has no front.
It does. No frontage.
It has no frontage because this is a paper road.
Correct. It's an undeveloped road.
Okay. So that is, do we have any precedent for this? I'm not to say that I'm against this. I just want to know what the legal ramifications are.
So this would be the second potential application coming in. This is a new section in the zoning bylaw that other municipalities have to save historic and natural resources.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I meant the precedents for the paper road thing.
Oh, yeah. So where we went through with this with the previous subdivision was that the only way that this could really be built out was if you built out the entire road, which would, this road here would go all the way. They would have to build out the entire thing all the way to connect to this other road, which made no reasonable sense.
That road connects to the, the cul-de-sac at the end of the cemetery in the very back? That would be essentially where it would connect
to like back here.
The backside of Wickham.
So that's why that did. But yeah, there are certainly paper streets that exist, and usually you have to build those out in order to actually get that frontage.
Okay, so this would,
yeah.
So you would have an easement on the triangular shaped property in order to have access to the rectangular one?
Correct.
Is that the way that would work?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. And I know that easements are frowned upon these days. So I don't know what legal will say. I just don't know. I have a neighbor with an easement.
What are you referring to, DM? Why is it frowned upon?
I'm sorry?
What are you referring to? Why is it frowned upon?
Easements across properties to gain access to other properties have become, I believe, they're just problematic devices.
Yeah, but is it particular to Winchester, or is it just? I mean, it's a common thing.
It's a common historical thing. I think that the establishment of new easements is the concern, and I don't know enough about this. This is something I'd just like to get legal to comment on. Is what the current opinion is about putting in new easements. And we've lost your screen share, Brian. Have we lost Brian? I think we've lost Brian.
Oh man.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's left any of us being able to be host. So I cannot screen share, although we do have the documents here. So Amy, can you verbally tell us?
Yeah, sure. At this point, I mean, the presentation wasn't wonderful. I'll give everybody that. This originally started as my application, for the demolition delay. And then it just kind of evolved into this because we were just trying to figure out and feel whether the town itself, both you and the Historical Commission, whether you would be willing to support such a, an application. So we have the current house that we live in, and you'll see it on the earlier pages. There's pictures of all four sides of the house. The house does sit, because it was one of the original houses in the neighborhood, so it sits kind of a little cockeyed on the lot, for lack of a better word, and faces, the outside of the neighborhood. But then when the other lots came in, it's straight. They are straight, and this one's a little off. And then the lot behind it, you can see in a couple different photos below, and those are neighbors. The Historical Commission really likes the tool shed in my backyard, which was built by Jerome Foster, as well as some of the additions to the home. I was basically, originally when I had, thought about, adding to the house, I was looking for some changes that I'd seen a lot of Royal Barry Wills homes turn into and what have you. But when I showed these plans to the Historical Commission, they felt that they were great plans, but they weren't great with regards to preserving the original structure. So I haven't had time to go back to an architect to really get an idea of what we could do to add to the house. The house itself isn't a terrible size. It's just an awkward layout. Obviously, my daughter's room upstairs is only about 9 by 7, and then she has this little annex that's above the front door where she is. And then the other side is a fairly large room. We'd like to be able to, just because the neighborhood has had to deal with, us applying multiple times and really not having done anything. The thought process was, if we were going to do such a project and build in the back, that we would also get permission or designs approved, so that we could finally settle and just do the whole project all at once, as opposed to putting the neighborhood through another source of meetings. So we're still, clearly we have to go back to the drawing board on those drawings. However, and then we didn't get to talk about the design for the house in the back at all. I don't think that was a concern at this point. I think the idea was whether they would support, moving forward with the application, asking for the relief based on saving the historical resource. That's pretty much it.
Okay. I think Brian is back. And
Yeah,
Brian,
my internet just got totally.
If you could make
no
me the
power.
Can you,
I'm on my cell phone. If you can
you
hear me.
co-host me? Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
So if you could make me a co-host in case this happens again, that would be welcome.
Yeah.
So why don't we have the board? If I know we're a bit over, but why don't we set aside 5 minutes for the board to ask questions? Or
I had a question for Amy. Amy, thanks for sending over all of your description of the pictures. It was really helpful. One question I had is, I know you referenced, I think in your notes, at least one neighbor, made a comment about not wanting to see concrete walls, and I know there's been effort to repave a portion of the road to try and contribute to the neighborhood. Do you have sort of support from all of the neighbors in the neighborhood for this?
I do not have support from all of the neighbors. No. There are some that will tell you that they don't want us to be able to do anything, which is, their prerogative as far as I'm concerned. I do have some of the neighbors, and then some don't want to be involved. You know what I mean? They just they'd rather just stay out of it. So there's about 3 or 4 neighbors, I would say, that are against the project. But they're against any project that we do. So.
If I might say, the previous subdivision request where there was a really contentious hearing on that. So.
But even the previous owners asked for something, and yeah, I think it's just been a continual piece.
Okay, I Ching, please.
Yeah, hi, Amy.
Hi.
I had a question for maybe the process. So this ultimately would be the decision of the ZBA. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're asking for a relief from frontage as well as.
Well, essentially, I would need because it's the slope, right? And Winchester's bylaws require that you don't go based upon the proposed slope. You go you go on the existing grade levels. So with that regard, I would be requesting also a variance for height so that I could keep it level kind of in that backyard. So essentially, I think I'm asking for 4 to 6 feet. It just depends on where the house ends up being put.
And is the original house an actual Royal Barry Wills?
It is. He is. If you look at the original on that first page there, he is listed as the original. R.B. Wills is listed as the original architect for the home. It has undergone a bunch of additions. The garage was done twice, and there's a sunroom that's kind of not great on the back side of it. It's on lally columns. But for the most part, those additions and changes to the main structure of the home were made in the 1940s by Jerome Foster, who the Historical Commission also finds to be a well-known architect in the area.
I think that your facade for the renovation is quite lovely, but
I like it. Their issue, or John's issue more specifically, was that if you look at the structure as it stands and then you look at the
Someone's alarm is going off.
That's mine. I apologize. I thought I turned it off.
And I think if we could keep mind of our clock, it's now 20 after.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay. He just felt as though it wasn't in keeping with the same look and feel of the house. I really like those designs, and connecting the garage and adding those dormers that actually I took from another Royal Barry that I found and really kind of worked it in, but that wasn't his feeling. And we also have to involve at this point, if it gets to this level, the Massachusetts Historical Commission, which would need to weigh in on the project as well, if we were to change it. I am so sorry. Usually I'm in bed at this time, so.
Sally, go ahead, please.
So I'm generally agree with Brian that I'm in favor of using our new zoning bylaw waiver to preserve this house. And in doing so, put a preservation restriction on it. It's a permanent restriction on the house. And I think that whatever is built on the adjoining lot should fit in as much as possible with the renovations to this house. And I think that an architectural a preservation architect would be an essential consultant to the planning board on this project, and that their views would also be relevant to the style and character and design of the new house too. As for the easement goes, I don't know what I think about that. There's a present dislike of easements. So I have to have more information about that, but I definitely understand that if the slope is too steep to build a road into the pond, essentially, you don't do that. It's a wetland. So in general, I'm in favor. For some reason, I have not received this entire package, but I'll keep looking because I don't know when it was sent or why I don't have it. But I'm generally in favor, but I really want to make sure that architectural preservation is a very top priority and that we retain the 53G services of the preservation architect.
Okay. Cheryl, do you have something you want to add to the discussion?
We might have lost her.
Yeah,
Oh, dear.
she had to go.
Okay. So I think it's an intriguing thing to look into. I think it really, the devil really is in the details. I know it's a challenging site. There is some pretty steep grades on its site. So I think the board seems to be generally in favor of entertaining the prospect of doing this, as we do have a significant role in terms of presenting this to the ZBA. But again, the ZBA, we are an advisory board to the ZBA, although you do have to check a lot of boxes with us to proceed. So I think based on this board's reaction, that if you were to proceed, we would look at your proposal. Does the board feel that way? I'm not making anything up, am I?
No, I mean, I'm in favor of architectural historic preservation.
Yeah.
But I realize that there are issues with the site, which is why the waiver bylaw was written. And I just need to understand much more about what's proposed and how architecturally consistent it is with the historic house.
Agreed
and
completely.
what are the environmental impacts on the pond?
Agreed completely. So I think
Not
what,
by a pond.
well,
Isn't it on Little Winter Pond?
No, it's further away. It's actually that's closer to Chesterford. So we're coming back a couple blocks. We're close to the back side of the cemetery where there's a small cul-de-sac, and then the DPW has some storage areas there.
Okay, my apologies.
Okay, so
We do
I think,
have some conservation area because there's a lowland inside the cemetery. So we have within we have a 25 feet of the 100-foot buffer, but it's very small in comparison to the lot.
Right.
okay.
Yep.
Why
That
don't,
triangle there, and
Yes.
then the rectangle next to it.
So I see.
so I'm going to have to ask us to come to an end of this section because we still have a lot of things to discuss.
Okay.
So I think what you're hearing from the board is they're interested, but we will still need to see a substantial amount of detail about the design, the environmental impact, what sort of grading is required. And we would definitely want to know, I think historical will have to have a say as to what we want to hear what historical says about your renovations. Also, what sort of restrictions will be required on that property, and to make sure that the new property fits in with the neighborhood, because it is a very interesting neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Appreciate
very
you
much for
stopping
your
by.
time. What?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now moving on to town meeting articles. We are. Did I
Sorry,
miss
hold on.
something?
There.
Oh no, we have Lock Street subdivision.
Mhm.
Yes. Can we do this really quickly, Brian?
I hope so.
Go ahead.
I don't know why I'm hearing a double here.
Well, we're hearing you fine.
That's good.
That's not good.
Got it. Okay. I'm gonna share this. So you've seen this PDF?
Yes, we're seeing the subdivision close out.
So the bond was established on June the 16th.
Sorry, this is kind of an issue. My phone is on just in case I am gonna get kicked off anyway. Okay.
So I don't know what happened to Brian's voice.
Sorry.
Oh,
Can you hear me or
I
no?
can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, I think this is okay. Sorry for all of this. Okay, so Lock Street subdivision. This was a two-house subdivision. The bond was established in June of 2020. It was then released from subdivision control once the bond was established, so those lots could be sold. April of 21, the majority of the bond was released with only the $15,450 remaining in order to account for any vegetation that does not survive the year. Last month, the applicants requested the remaining funds to be released from the bond based upon the vegetation surviving more than a year, and that was confirmed by the tree warden, Jay Gill. Engineering has confirmed that the curb inlet had been installed correctly. That was one of the last conditions of the subdivision. I recommended releasing the remaining funds back to the applicant due to all of the items being done to the satisfaction of the engineering and planning departments. The applicants are here if there's any questions.
So I want to ask if there is a motion to.
Happy with the work. And thanks to Mike and Toby.
Okay, so I want to ask the board, is there a motion to release the remainder of the funds for the Lock Street subdivision?
So moved.
And is there a second?
A second.
Eaching a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. So let us vote. Roll call vote, please. Eaching Scott.
Aye.
Sally Dale.
Aye.
Kurt Spring.
Aye.
Diabjurius, aye. That is the fastest vote I think we've had in years. So it's all released, and that's 401 absent, as Cheryl's not with us. So thank you much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yep, Mike and Toby, I'll send you a record of that vote soon.
Excellent. So let us move on to town meeting articles. Okay, so we have two things before us. One is we may wish to, Brian Manter, are you here just for fun, or are you gonna, I don't know if Brian can.
Oh yeah, sorry. There you go, Brian.
No, I wanted to hear the subdivision release discussion, because I think that would be good for me learning the process moving forward.
Okay, well,
that was not the one. That was not the one to learn from.
That was really fast. We'll try to prolong it for your education next time. Okay,
it's easy. It sounds like.
Yeah, so it's terribly easy.
Yeah.
On the articles for town meeting, we have two tasks in front of us. One is to talk about our articles. The other is to weigh in on articles that are put forth by other entities. So one way of approaching this is, so I sent around two presentations, and I really apologize, but life has been hectic, so I wasn't able to get to them to you earlier. There are substantial issues around our Article 6 which is for the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and I think we need to discuss those at length this evening. And issues not in terms of what I think the article is fine, but certainly in terms of how it's being perceived and the feedback I've gotten. So what I'd like to do is to discuss our articles, because I think that will take the most time. And then one of the things we have done in the past is we meet shortly before town meeting, and we could give our opinions on the other town meeting articles I think there really is only one or two, maybe just one. One is the three, Sally says, showing a European
Yes.
three.
I just gathering from Brian's memo that there was Article 8 about the town forest, Article 9 about affordable housing at Washington and Swanton, and Article 12, if we had anything to say about the townwide study of what is Brian refers to as more than traffic.
Okay, well, those are three. I think we can handle those in one of our short meetings. I would note that we do have, so why don't we just jump into that? The Waterfield Lot Task Force, the select board has decided to go and continue negotiations with Civico. So if we have issues that we want to bring up, we can do that at another meeting. So let's just dive into Article 3 first, which is the Planning Board report. I sent around a draft of the report late this afternoon. I apologize. Brian, if you've got that. The things that are missing from this report is a notation of what our current as subsidized housing inventory is at. And that's a number that Brian and I can work on and get in there. But if we move through this, let's just, this is just sort of bureaucracy. Please continue. I spelled everyone's name right. So these are, we try to provide some indication of what's going on in the multi-unit developments. Because the Waterfield lot is up in the air at the moment, I did not include it because we don't know what's going to happen on that lot. I also did not put in the Washington Street lot because we don't know what's happening there. I believe these are all of the large developments which are either where a permit has been approved or applied for. Did I get that right, Brian?
Yeah, there are a couple, well, there's not a couple. The one that I was immediately thinking about was not a large project. I believe it was 4 units. 735 Main Street is still under appeal. I don't really know. I mean, technically it's a multi-unit if you want to put it in there, but it's not really one of these larger projects.
It's good to keep it in the on the
It's
list.
good. I mean, it was, you know, it's a prime location. It's a prime location.
Okay, it's a 4-unit. Okay, so I'll put 735 Main
4-unit
Street.
mixed use. It's a mixed use.
4-unit mixed use.
Under
I think
appeal,
2 commercial
right?
units on the first floor.
Yeah, it's been under appeal for years. Okay, and the other one?
That's the only one that's been permitted.
Okay.
The others are they have not. So I would say
Yeah,
don't put.
I mean, we put in one last time, which was the Meineke, the possible one up on Main Street, but that never.
No, it's the same thing we could do for Sakura as well. That one's brewing and cooking, but it's unsure exactly what's going to happen there.
Yeah, so let's just leave. I would prefer to leave things that are more solid. So then the next slide, please, is just an introduction to the North Main Street study, flashy graphics, if you could continue. Introduction, you know, this is the statement that's actually in the study. I decided not to put the actual vision statement in because it's very long and we're already at 14 slides. Talking about all the input we got, what the deliverables are. And I'm being hopefully careful to say that these are recommendations for zoning changes. They are not changes that we are envisioning yet because we haven't discussed them. I think that's important. Next slide, please. Then just a couple of examples of what the analysis, the report gave us. Some interesting ones, for instance, land versus building value. You know, that's which lots are more likely to be sold and developed because it's cheaper to buy the land. And then the next slide is the sort of the conglomeration of all the different factors that provide an instance of potential for change. So just sort of a teaser as to what's available in the report. I put these in here because those are the recommendations. I highlighted again that these are not recommendations of this board. They are recommendations of the report. then what's coming up in terms of the process. I don't recall whether we decided we were going for spring or fall. I think that spring is kind of tight. We might want to change this to fall.
I think we did. Or
Yeah, we did
I
change
think
it
we
to
should
fall.
change this to fall.
So page 11, let's change spring to fall. Okay, next page, please. Introduction to the Holton Street study, because we did get money this past spring to start that. And we have started looking at consultants, or Brian has developed a list that we will review. So not much more to say about that. Next page is other things. I think it's Brian's work as the cat herder for the Waterfield Lab Task Force was a remarkable. I think he did a remarkable job under extremely challenging conditions. I don't know if you had a chance to view those hearings or those meetings. They were extremely challenging, and I think Brian did a great job on that. And also, Brian and I participated in the Housing Equity Forum this past, I guess it was spring, early summer. And I think that's part of our public outreach. And then I think our last slide is very much similar to the one that we put out in the spring. The only difference is that I have removed the Master Plan Implementation Committee and just said begin implementation of the master plan. And I can put that back in, I think, after we have a thorough discussion of what's happening with the how we set up the implementation committee. And I think we can get to that. So my key question on this, so I am going to be giving these live. So I can, if you have input, I don't know when I have to submit the actual PDFs to the town so that they can display them properly. But the last time to pre-record them would have been tomorrow, and that's just not going to happen. So if there are any glaring things I've missed, you can tell it right. You can say right now, or you can pass them on to Brian. 14 slides is a lot. Sally.
The two comments I have is we're on the slide where you listed the people that you want to thank, including the people that you had forgotten to thank.
Who did I forget?
I would like to remember to thank the Conservation Commission.
Oh yeah, and I have to thank Nancy. Hey Nancy, thank you.
Okay, and I had some other really minor edits. Brian, could you just go back to one? I don't think there was anything on one. No, there wasn't, obviously. Sorry. Go ahead. To 2, 3. Yeah, we talked about this one. Oh, I had comments about the 3 slides from the North Main Street study. There's another really interesting slide which highlights the historic properties. And the thing that's concerning to me about the direction forward for North Main Street is that there might be an unfortunate intersection of historic houses and houses likely to be torn down. And so I would like I know you don't want to have another slide. I totally get that. But the slide that highlights all the historic properties just feels really important to me. So it's number 6, Brian. So number 7.
Well, unfortunately, Sally, the main property, the big one, which is the Sakura restaurant, is labeled as one of the least likely to be developed according to their criteria.
Yeah, I think I was thinking more of the multiple small single family homes that line, particularly GBD to the south. 3.
Okay, so I can so one option would be to remove one of these and put in the historical. So certainly there's the next slide, which is potential for change.
Yeah, this is the real hot potato, and I think people are going to be very interested in this. And I defer to others. I just wanted to emphasize that a big part of this analysis is preservation of historic structures.
So how does the rest of the board feel about replacing the previous slide, which is the land versus property value, with the slide of the historical structures?
I feel like the point is to talk about what you just put in, land versus building value. I think that is a lead for the potential for change. Those two work together.
Kurt?
Yeah, as I said, I defer. If you have a limited number of screens, I defer to others.
Yeah, Kurt, do you have an opinion one way or the other?
I think I would probably lean towards what Eaching said too, is that, I think if we're trying to really highlight where there's opportunities for development and growth to, enhance North Main Street, I think this is helpful because it really shows, I think, where there's potentially development in play.
Okay, I mean, I should warn you that I have not yet timed this talk. And if I do have to remove a slide, it will probably be the land versus property one, because that is an input to the potential for change slide. So I may have to remove a slide somewhere, and I don't know which one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know you're probably pressed for time as you go through these, but I mean, is there just the opportunity to add, assuming these slides stay in, to just mention that, all of this would be,
yes,
in the context to evaluating historic preservation for structures in this quarter?
Yeah, so what I could do is, when I speak to the potential for change slide, I can describe all of the inputs that go into this, so that yeah, that I will definitely do.
Okay.
So Brian, can you just flip through the other like not 5 slides? Right. So this was that one, right? Number 11 was final report plan of draft. Oh yeah, so we were going to change this to the fall. And then 12 was funded, evaluate. Oh, and this is other work that the planning board is doing outside of North Main Street. I see. Okay. And then 13 was praise for Brian. Well done, sir. And so Dia, can we, well, to you, obviously it's you're running, but I'm just curious about what the concerns were about the implementation committee.
Let us get to that. Let's hold on to that. Let's go through the next presentation, which is for Article. Which one is it? Article 5.
Well, 4 is the floodplain, but
yeah, I think we can assume that one is going to go over with no problems.
And then 5 is the half story.
Yeah, so why don't we do half story, and we need a thorough discussion of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So Brian, if you could bring up.
And we received 2 letters about this. Is that right, Brian?
We did. Hold on. Let me get the article. I just need to get that. Hold on. Here it is.
So I apologize in advance. I took some liberties with your figures each in, just to try to remove. So this is almost what it looks like. I for some reason, so the slides are the same. They just look slightly different. Like the bottom part is not in 50-point type. But anyway, so this is, we go through a standard sort of format where we provide an objective. We had earlier talked about how this was to bring things into harmony, and we had some pushback as to that was a sort of a overreaching statement. And so I think focusing on the quantification of the size of the half story to keep it in harmony might be a way of introducing that concept, making it a little more down to earth. So that's the language that I have here. Why don't we just walk through this, Brian, fairly quickly? It's pretty straightforward. The reasons we went into this is that the current definition has caused chronic confusion over the years. And the fact is that when you think of a half story, you think of a half story in terms of massing or volume, not necessarily just via some sort of a definition, as in our zoning bylaws, which is a sloped roof meeting something. So this phrasing on the second bullet point, I don't know if I'm happy with it. I don't know the lingo enough to say whether that is a correct way of describing what we're doing now. But I wanted to separate out from the, the fact that we are looking at quantifying something so that it really is a half story, not a 2/3 story or 3/4 story. So if we move on from this, Brian.
Well, I would just say one comment that this reads as in the new definition is like this. So I think you should take, this is actually the current.
Right. So the new definition of half stories is at the top of every slide.
I know.
Yeah,
no, I
and
know.
so
I'm just saying it's
yeah.
confusing because it.
Yeah. So
This sounds like the new definition defines a half story only by.
Right. So what should I? Okay.
comment.
So I can remove
Just take the word new.
remove title. There's the continuity of the article will be in the bottom now, so I can just remove the title of each slide. And I agree. Oh, let me make a note of which one this is for. This is for Article 5. Existing title confuses slides. Oh, I don't know how to write this. I'll remember. Okay, please continue. Okay, so this is the existing definition. And then the new slide, the next slide is the new definition. I tried to highlight the two different things that we're doing. We've taken the existing language and clarified it so that it's obvious which internal wall belongs to which exterior wall. And then the next slide just moves on to stating that we are now quantifying the massing in some manner by specifying essentially a maximum volume inside. This is Eaching's first drawing where we indicate that the taller roof structure leads to the question, is this truly a half story? Moving on to the next slide, again, showing that by specifying a volume by the clear height greater than 7, we are highlighting that that red area is the area that we are regulating in terms of how large that area is. And then I think we're really close to the end here. Next slide. And then this shows the relationship between the floor areas, which arrives at the 0.65 ratio. And
this drawing is a little bit confusing.
This drawing?
I wonder if this is a little bit confusing in that maybe the X and Y should be the same shape.
Yeah, that was my reaction. I was a little confused by that.
Okay, that's fine. I can do that. I literally just copied this from the slides that we presented that were at our hearing. So, in slide 9.
And I don't know if that actually X is 65, less than 65%, right? So I could make you a new slide too.
Oh, you mean in terms of whether or not they're shown to the same proportion?
Yeah, no, X is not. So like right now in the image, X does not look like it's 65.
I will, that's easy enough for me to do. So I'll do that. That's not a problem.
Did you do an area calculation? Is that right?
Yeah, I can just figure out what 65% of the area is and figure out how much the dormer takes and do this. Yeah, so I can do that. So slide 9 is make story below same shape. And ensure that hatched area in attic is actually 65%. Okay?
No, the clear area is 65%. The hatched area would be the.
Yes, thank you. The clear area, the hatched area is 45%. There.
35.
35.
Batting 1,000.
No, I'm batting 992. Okay, so the I'm just going to say the clear area is 65%. Okay, that's easier to do. Okay,
Do
so
we
there's
really
that.
justify to take away the dormer? I think that just makes it so confusing for people.
Well, I want to. Yes, we did
I
have.
thought it was good you put it in because you mentioned that one of the reasons to do this is to allow a provision for within that 65% that there be dormer access to the third floor, which we did on a street in town recently. I forget which the name of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the we had two comments on this that came to us. One of them was talking about how 65% was too large, and that it really was more than half story. They had other comments, but I think that allowing for, I mean, a dormer, like for instance, I have a dormer in my attic, which its only use is because I have stairs that come up. So it doesn't add to the living area, even though it's technically above 7 feet because that's what you need for head height, I believe, as you go up the stairs. So it would count towards my living area, but it's not useful as living area in a sense.
Except you can walk through it and without banging your head, unless you're overly.
Yes, that was
That's
yes.
living. That's living. Walking without banging your head.
Yes, if I chose to stand in between floors, yeah. But I think the dormer. Well, I think the key thing, Brian, is if you go back a slide, the building shows a dormer.
It does.
And so if we use this as the template for the next slide, then we do have this left part of the building which is not directly underneath the roof, right?
Right.
And so
I find that when we're describing this, people really get lost with the multiple ideas.
Yep.
And the simpler the better. But I see what you mean about the previous slide corresponding to this. I mean, that's how I made it so that it corresponds.
Yeah, the only thing I would note is that in the preceding slide, it's not obvious that the addition on the back is narrower than the main building. So when you go to the, thank you, Brian, for going back and forth. I'm sure you're getting dizzy. So when you look at the next slide, there's this thing on the right. It juts out and there's like this. It's not the full width. So what I could do is put in a line on the previous slide showing that it's actually cut back.
Or do a dotted line on slide number 9 that shows, excuse me, on the left image, the dotted line would just show the story below.
That's
and
true.
Label the story below.
So put the yeah. Okay. So add extension to. Okay. So I will not make the story below the same shape. I will start a new sheet of paper here and say.
Yeah, I'd be happy to just make you that graph.
Okay. Which one? You mean
this one?
Page 9?
Yeah.
I would welcome that. So okay. Yeah, so fix up page 9 so that the hatched area or the clear area is appropriate and that the extension, the addition below is shown as a dotted line off the back. And then I think we're cool.
So can I ask a question about some of the feedback? And I have to say, I haven't completely absorbed all the nuances of the feedback, but one thing I did latch onto was the idea that when we change a definition like this, sometimes it has a ripple effect. And I don't know whether we've done that analysis yet. And I wonder if that will be an obstacle to the conversation.
I think half story, we've searched through the zoning bylaws looking for where half stories used.
No, I think it's having to do with overlapping to other definitions, like finished height was one of the words that we used. I don't know if that's defined. Maybe it's an insignificant concern, and we should just not worry about it right now.
I think that Mr. Feigenbaum's concerns are valid. I think that in order to address them, we would have to take apart this zoning bylaw and put it back together, because the intertwinedness of what he was his comments about whether it belongs in the definition or in a regulation, I think are valid, but I don't know that it's easy to extricate these things and separate them the way he would want to without having to redo significant other parts of this zoning.
So, Brian, this gets to that question that I've heard the word used, recodification, which is a really deep dive kind of activity, which we had talked about years ago, and it was really expensive and we didn't do it. And my question is whether this will, I mean, I really liked the definition that I Ching and I came up with. Her graphics and the research that we did. I just don't know if it's going to be one more thing that we get tripped up on or not. And so this question of recodifying is looming
Yeah, so
larger.
there was a recodification. It was expensive, and there was a recodification. And there's still more. And so what a recodification is basically there's no real change in the there's supposed to be no real changes in the zoning bylaw. It just gets organized in a different way that makes more sense or is updated. So you're not literally talking about having horses being, outside of the house, like outside of your building. Like that's what we were dealing with
Well, and
prior
also
to the
in some places it
recodification.
says show Mylars, and I don't think that developers present Mylars anymore.
Would they do Mylars to the? I mean, they need Mylars for the registry, so that is.
Oh, good. Okay, so but I understand what you're saying about other points. Yeah.
But
I mean, to be honest, there are parts, like if you look at our table of dimensions, it's a mess. It has all sorts of footnotes and asterisks and things like that. Clarifying all of that would be wonderful. But you have to be careful, again, that we've got this house of cards, and restructuring it so that it's a more sturdy house of cards without changing the dimensions of any of the rooms or the relationship to each other's is essentially what a recodification does. And so coming in and saying we want to redefine, we want to separate out two combined things does require someone to follow those threads throughout the whole thing. And we don't have, we could ask for the resources to do that. We'd also have to get town meeting to agree that the result has not changed anything of substance in the zoning.
So I guess I opened up a can of worms. I'm sorry.
It's been opened before, Sally. The worms are still alive.
So I'm not the first Pandora. So would the decision be to proceed as with edits as noted?
I would suggest so. I think town meeting is understanding of the fact that some things can only be nibbled at around the edges. There was certainly a great deal of blowback the last time the zoning was codified. The planning board was accused of sneaking in zoning changes under the hood. There is sensitivity because this involves property rights. So this is, I think, a minimal change.
And this is to the benefit of the homeowners.
It's to the benefit of the neighbors. Some people may feel that it takes away their property rights by preventing them from building a larger house. Oh. So this is, so you're going to get pushback on all sides or on some sides. But if we wanted to go in and try to really extricate these connected things, I think it's a much larger job. It will take much more time, and I think the perfect is the enemy of the good right here.
Oh yeah.
Right. I Ching.
I think one thing that really clarified things for me in the beginning was when Sally did all the other towns and found their half-story definitions, and I think that people are afraid that we're just picking this out of thin air and just making it up. But, so if you contextualize that, I think that would be helpful to others.
Yes, and I hate to ask Sally, could you send that to me again? Because
Yes, it's a Word document that actually extracts all half-story
yeah,
definitions from a dozen or more towns.
yeah,
That was really
Okay,
good.
I can.
yeah,
The
send
other
that to me. Yeah,
The other thing, Dia, was when you clarified that this was sort of about the denser parts, that when buildings are closer together and how that feels. I was looking at like mansions and like wondering if people are building beyond, the half story. But this is sort of to protect those denser areas to uh,
right.
help
This is
it feel less crowded.
okay. So I will note those things, and I will note we looked at similar bylaws from neighboring town.
Right, and I can send you that document, and it might be possible to just, I don't know, let's look at it.
If you could just send it to me, and I will include it in my comments.
Good.
Because
Excellent.
I haven't made my speech yet.
Okay.
So if this is okay, then we can move on. And we do have a late night now. I apologize. I think we can move on to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Great.
So I've had conversations over the past several weeks or months. I forget how long it's been. I think I spoke about some of them with you. I spoke with town council. I spoke with the assistant town manager. I spoke with the chair of the select board, Susan Verdicchio. The select board last night had their hearing on articles similar to what we would have next Monday when we talk about articles from other organizations. There were significant arguments made about, now I say significant in that I do believe that they could be dealt with, but within the context of town meeting, I think it might be difficult. So the concerns that were raised were about the delegation of authority as to the appointing bodies, and that some of the appointing by the members would come from appointed and not elected commissions. So for instance, we asked that a member of Concom, a member of Disability Access, a member of Housing Partnership Board, those are all commissions appointed by the select board. There were concerns raised about how that dilutes or misdirects or redirects the power of the select board. So there were other points made about the phrase we put in there about obtaining funding. And I did have a long discussion with the town clerk who would have to manage this. And she was concerned about the timing, i.e. having the appointments be after fall town meeting rather than after spring, as are the other standing committees, and the fact that it was only 30 days after town meeting, which would be difficult to get everyone together because there were so many moving bodies. So I don't think it's useful to get into the reasons why some of the select board members had their opinions. I think the biggest concern I have is that the issue of authority as to whether or not this committee confuses authority with the select board is something that will be brought up at town meeting, and it will be used, I think, to indicate that this is confusing things rather than clarifying things. I think that's the biggest concern, certainly one of the concerns raised by town council, but town council said he couldn't, something seemed to ride to him, but he couldn't put his finger on it, which I didn't find particularly helpful, because you can't really fix something if you don't know what the problem is. even some of the supportive members of the select board indicated that they were unused to this selection process where you had, again, the select board appointing members of other boards who would then, for instance, again, Concom, et cetera, who would then appoint. I believe it has been done in the past. I believe, for instance, Concom did have or does have appointment on the Right Lock Farm Committee, I believe. I'm not sure anymore. It's so long in the past. So I think there's a real question, and I'm going to stop soon, as to how we want to proceed with the implementation committee. I think we have a couple of options. One is we could clean up some of the language. So for instance, we can certainly change when the appointment's made so it makes the town clerk's life easier. We could remove the line in there which talks about seeking funding, because I believe we are not asking for something that an ordinary standing committee doesn't already have. So taking that language out, I don't think hurts it, but it does make it less problematic. People won't be able to look at that and say, oh, where's the money going? Who's in charge of it? Are they going to, you know, is there possible problems with capital? So removing that line talking about seeking funding doesn't change what the committee can do, but it makes it less of a target. The bigger question is, if we want to try to avoid attacks based on the selection process, is we could contemplate moving to a smaller committees. So for instance, FinCom, which is also a standing committee of town meeting, the selection is made by the town moderator, the chair of the select board, and one other person who I've forgotten, which I think might be the FinCom chair, I'm not sure. Or we could have the select board, so those three people would sit in and choose every single member of this committee. Other ways of doing it are for the select board would choose three people, town moderator would choose three people, we would choose three people, so there would be another way of doing that. Or we could just take the ball back into our court and say, we don't need to have this committee go before town, become a standing member of town meeting. We can make it a committee, a subcommittee, or something which gets its authority just from the planning board. And we can then go through and have the selection the way we would like it without having to run this is what is essentially a purely political gauntlet, which is being thrown up. So there's a lot of stuff I just threw at you, and I'm going to shut up and you can ask questions or whatever.
That was a lot.
That was a lot, and I apologize. Yeah, go ahead, Sally.
Well, so I always think that simplifying things is a good thing, and removing things that are already targets for protest or objection is always a good thing to think about. But the spirit of the implementation committee is not about authority and control. The spirit of the implementation committee was to support and assist and encourage cross-silo planning and collaboration. And perhaps the spirit of the thing isn't reflected in the operating mechanism of it. And if that's the case, that would be something to fix on very short notice.
I think,
do people not get that this is not like us, the planning board, or anybody trying to tell every board and committee in town what to do, that it's simply a platform for recognizing commonalities in terms of goals and strategies?
I believe that some people get it and some people don't. I believe that there are at least two members of the select board who will be vocal, who believe that this is the wrong way of doing this. and that it is confusing lines of authority, and it is creating requirements of the select board which they should not have, that goes against their brief.
I see, right.
So
Well, one point that I want to make also is that many of the strategies that are in the master plan, action plan, are already beginning to unfold. And one of the roles of the implementation committee was to recognize the progress of that unfolding. So, and that's a report, that's an analysis and reporting thing. It's not an authority thing, it's data collection and report. I didn't see this as an authority thing ever.
I completely agree with you.
So, but we just have to look at the language and take out anything that makes people wiggle about authority. It's not about that.
I think that there are two members of the select. Now, we don't live and die by what the select board says. So I believe that there are two people on the select board who do not feel that this is diluting their authority, and there are two people who do. The arguments that you have made, Sally, I made last night. It was brought up at last week's Housing Partnership Board meeting as well as a dilution of select board authority. I made the same argument to one of those two people. I don't think that a logical response will achieve the goal. And so, again, I think this is why this is a political fight, not a fight based upon the merits of what we are trying to do.
So one of the scenarios that you put on the table was, well, just go back to the original description that was written in the master plan report by Jen Goldson's firm, which was that the planning board shall coordinate implementation. And so, or whatever words that she used, because even coordinate sounds overly directive. And I truly don't think of this as a directive thing as much as I do a facilitative and communications and keeping up to date on what's going on and cross communication.
So the master plan calls for the planning board to create an implementation committee which reports to the planning board. We discussed that at length and decided that because we wanted this to be reflective of the town and also to disconnect it from politics associated with either the planning board or another board, we would have it report to town meeting. I think that one way of hewing to that same vision is if we decide to go back to what the master plan says and have it report to the planning board, is we can still have the master plan implementation committee report to town meeting. It can either be as part of our report, or we could sponsor another article where they would report to town meeting. So if the important part is to get town meeting notified and involved, then I think we can do that without having it be a committee, a standing committee of the town meeting.
It would instead be a subcommittee of the planning board? Is that how that works?
I think we would, yeah, something like that. I don't know what the exact wording is, but it would be sort of like, it was, for instance, design review committee is appointed by the select board, but it's not really a.
Well, there's three sources for
appointment. And the
yeah, I'm
planning
sorry.
board.
Yeah, but there must be some board which is appointed solely by the select board.
Maybe
I don't
traffic and transportation.
Maybe traffic.
I believe
the point is,
ZBA.
it would be, yeah. So it would be a committee. It wouldn't be a subcommittee in the sense that I don't think we aren't necessarily on it, but it would gain its existence through us, and so we would simply create it.
So it would be an activity of the planning board that we would engage in the activity of keeping track of all of the progress on all of the action plans and keeping ourselves informed of what all the different responsible parties, as they're called, are doing. But it's not like It's not to be bossy. It's just to keep track and take credit, to give credit where credit's due, that progress
And,
has
and
been made.
and to create synergies. I mean, the whole thing about this was to create synergies to make sure that everyone is pulling together in the same direction, and often, the sum of two parts is greater than the whole. So my suggestion, and the board, I realize I'm dumping all of this on you at a very late time, and it is late in the evening as well, is that we withdraw the article and that gives us time to discuss which direction we wish to pursue. My understanding of the politics surrounding this matter is that there will be very vocal forces which will be against it. And it's the vocality, it's the loudness of those voices, which I think will be, it's much more difficult in these Zoom town meetings to have discussions at town meeting. I don't know what's wrong with them, but there's so there seems to be the ability of a one particular faction to monopolize discussion. And I don't, it's not that way. It hasn't been that way at personal town meetings. So what I was thinking about today is, if we were to pursue with this article on the warrant, how would I provide a, not necessarily a defense, but to what would I say which would try to diminish the effect of what I think are words which are designed to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt, rather than to elucidate real issues. And so I could not think of how I could do that in a 5-minute presentation with follow-up. I just don't think
that a quote from somebody that designed to create uncertainty and doubt?
There's actually there's in the software world, in particular in the open source software world, there's a phrase called FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it is used to describe how you create an environment where someone mistrusts what someone else says, because so it's not, I believe that there may be issues with this design, but I don't know that people who are coming up against it are willing, they're not willing to work with us to fix the issues. And so it's just laden with politics.
Well, if we have to withdraw it because it's just become a political hot potato, it will save time at town meeting, and it will keep divisive language from being given a platform in our town meeting. And the notion stands that we should be tracking progress towards our goals, and we shall then therefore figure out how we shall do so.
Yeah, so I Ching and Kurt, you have been extremely quiet. So
sorry, guys.
Please weigh in.
My gut feeling is with you, Deb. It's just the political environment there's something strange about it, and it may be spending too much capital on that for us to fight it. And I'd rather not. I think there's too much murkiness going on. So I'd support the withdrawing. I feel like our task is to make the committee, and we need to start to just, it's 2022 soon, so we need to get it done.
Kurt, this is all really new to you. Welcome to politics in a small town.
So I guess my question is, so what is the alternative then? Is the alternative what I Ching just said? If like this is removed, then it's just at our discretion how to create this committee?
Yeah, we can take the exact same design that we have now and go forward with it. We can reach out. We decided we wanted to have input from all the other committees as to who should, to appoint members. We can still do that. it will be through our auspices instead of through the town clerk. Make the town clerk very happy. We would have more work to do. In a sense, it makes it easier, but it does mean we have to bear a lot more. We're going to have to bear a lot of the burden in the first couple of years anyway, bringing people up to speed. That's just the nature of the beast. But I think as long as we make a commitment that this committee really does report to town meeting as to progress and has an independent mindset from our own, we have to be held to task as well as any other body. That I think it'll serve the same purpose.
So does that mean that we would withdraw it for now and come as a board together with a work plan to achieve the same result without it being this political issue?
It would just be under the planning board. I mean, the only difference between this and is that by doing it through town meeting, it's under town meeting, it reports to town meeting and doesn't have to, I mean, it just reports to town meeting. In essence, though, it would still be the planning board and myself kind of organizing that crew, because town meeting is not going to be, even if it's under town meeting is not going to be doing work.
Yeah, town meetings doesn't have subcommittees. Well, they might, I don't know, but.
So to Kurt, to your point is, and we've talked about this several times prior to you, that there are several ways to do this. It's really at the end of the day the personnel. It's not the structure. It's who are the people that are doing the work on this.
Right.
I would support a motion to indefinitely postpone, if you're asking, simply based on two things. One, the political capital, and two is that it's 6 days before town meeting and we're debating, well, we could do this 5 or 6 different ways. Like that's not, I think it's the right decision is what I'm trying to say.
I'm really disappointed that it has come to this. Part of me says we shouldn't give in to the politics. But I think, as Brian pointed out, we have a certain amount of political capital. If there is a way of achieving what we want to achieve without spending it, without, as you pointed out, Sally, creating further divisiveness at town meeting, bringing out and polarizing the atmosphere more, which I think we're going to already have there's going to be enough instances at town meeting where this is going to come out. I think it's going to come out about the Washington Swanton lot over, that's something that we need to talk about, or whether we want to support that initiative or not. I think that'll bring it out. So anyway,
we would talk about in that half-hour meeting before each town meeting session.
Yeah, I think there's.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's all we have.
That's all we've got. I realize it's late. If someone would like to make a motion, I guess the motion would be to indefinitely postpone.
Correct.
Article 6.
Fall town meeting warrant.
The fall town meeting warrant.
Period. No explanation, no indefinite, whatever.
No, we don't have to give an explanation.
Not for these motions, you don't.
Right. What, Yiching? What are you going to say?
I'll move it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Sally.
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Yiching.
Aye.
Diab says aye as well, and yeah, I'm just like I said, I'm really disappointed that it's come to this, but I think that in the long run we will get the job done. And
we will indeed, because the master plan represents an achievement of coming together and collaborating and collectively visioning, and that spirit endures regardless of the discussion about how we can keep track of our progress.
Yeah. So I think we need to talk about our next meeting so we can schedule it, and then we can all bid adieu for the evening.
I think we did. Didn't we already do
Yeah,
that?
we're meeting at 6:30. Well, we're meeting at 6:30 on Monday, November 1st.
Okay.
30 minutes before town meeting starts. All town meetings are 7 p.m. I think we'd like to, it'd be great if this was 3 nights, so that'd be a Monday, Thursday, Monday.
I think that we can hopefully get through the 3 articles that I believe
Planning
Sally
should be
and-
done on the first night.
Yeah, so
our
we should be
articles.
fine. Yeah, so we should, but I mean, the articles, Brian, that you pointed out, we need to review on the warrant that aren't ours. We should be able within a half hour to come to a decision.
Yeah, there's
as to
only
how-
like 3, so
Yeah.
I agree.
It's the town forest, it's Washington Swanton, and it's the townwide more than traffic study.
Right.
And I heard an inclination or an indication from Diab just now that the Washington Swanton might be slightly more difficult, not difficult, but complicated or more underlying.
They're
There's
simply
just a lot of
ask-
people want to talk. Yeah.
There are a lot of
Oh, I
people who want to talk, and they're now asking for significantly more money than last time to purchase the property.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And so I think that will bring out a lot of commentary, especially considering what's happened with the Waterfield law. I think we will be seeing a lot of people talking. But so we have a meeting. We have a very short agenda for that meeting. If we can get through that meeting, then we don't have to meet before any of the other town meetings, which would be great.
Correct. That's the
So
goal.
That's the goal. So I
And then after
appreciate
town
everyone.
meeting, the next meeting after that is it?
The
is
9th.
it
The 9th.
9th?
The 9th.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get some consultants here on the 9th. Is the 2, Tennis and
Yeah.
Beha.
I wish we had more than 2 to talk to.
But still, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, to have those 2 is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would more than welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, please.
Again.
Excellent. So let's do a roll call vote. Sally?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I Ching?
Aye.
Steve says aye as well. Thank you very much to Brian Zucchelli, Town Planner, to Nancy Polcari, our